Great. Hi all. Lovely to see you all. I hope everyone is well and healthy in this crazy world right now, and I hope everything's kind of okay. I don't know what it's like elsewhere in the world, because we've got quite an international audience now, but in the UK, we're in lockdown number 3, something like that. So we're I think the first lockdown, it was like really sunny and go for walks, so that was really nice. And the second one was kind of like getting near Christmas to look forward to, and this one's a bit more down really. But I hope everyone's kind of coping. I've actually taken the brave step during this period of going on a diet, which has been really miserable as well. So because if you'd seen me in the back end of last year, I mostly just ate chocolate. Yeah, and I've got this little app, and on the app it says, in 5 weeks you'll be this weight. Like, I look forward to things. So I keep thinking, well, in 5 weeks, like, the vaccine will be rolled out a bit more, and at least in the UK the weather might be less rubbish. So yeah, so lots of things to look forward to. There's brighter days ahead, right? So but I hope everyone's really well and coping in these exceptional times. And welcome to this LondonR. So I've run out of not sure how many LondonRs we've had over the years now, but this is obviously a wonderful online event organized by Laura and the team. So thank you, Laura, before I start. As Laura said, my name is Richard Pugh. I'm Chief Data Scientist and co-founder of Mango Solutions. So Mango is a data science consulting company founded on R, who run events like LondonR, for example, around the world. And if you want to know more about us, we are about 18 years old as a company. We are experts in R and Shiny. So if you need help with consulting or training or platforms, particularly on the RStudio stack, then come and have a chat with us. And for those who are watching closely, last November, after 18 years, we were acquired by a company called Ascent, who are a big software company. And so yeah, exciting times at Mango at the moment. We're getting funding and investment to grow and expand, and that's really, really exciting times. So all is well, and I'm sure we'll hear more from about that in the coming LondonRs and so on. So on that basis, by the way, I always get this in. You see this in every team looking to hire data science and data engineers right now, right? But we are hiring all sorts of roles: data engineers, data scientists, R and Python, head of data engineering, data consultants, validation engineers. Come and have a look at the website, and please get in touch if you fancy coming and being part of the Mango team. Right. One big announcement I want to make today is that our abstract submissions for EARL are open. Well done, Jeremy, with the thumb of the fist. That's exactly right. I'm desperate to get back into that. Maybe not the best bar in the world, but that bar next to that the EARL conference, and have a drink with you all, and or hopefully this year will be online and a mix. Perhaps we'll see. But abstracts are now open. So please, if you've got a really good story about how you've used R in production, or used R to make an impact in an organization, please do submit abstracts. And fingers crossed, we look forward to seeing you all either virtually or in person. Would be lovely in September. September's kind of like in that kind of like zone of uncertainty, pandemic wise, right? No idea. So we'll see. In between that, of course, we'll carry on with the LondonRs. They're going to be virtual, for now. And when we get back to the Balls Brothers pub, we'll see if we can do sort of a mix. But if you would like to present, please do get in touch. So Laura would be really, really kind of keen to talk to you if you'd like to make a do a presentation at a LondonR event in the future. So please do get in touch. So we've got a really truly international field to our lineup today. We have Faris from Amsterdam, Jonathan from New Zealand, and Rachael from Boston. So we've got 3 great talks today. And to start off with, I'm going to hand over to Faris, who's going to talk to us about empowering the biologist and liberating the bioinformatician. So this is kind of very close to my original career. So we're looking forward to hearing from this one. So over to you, Faris.
Great, thanks very much. I'll start sharing the screen. Let me see if you need to stop sharing, and then I can share, I think. Great. So I'm sharing my screen. I hope everybody sees it. So I'll go into full presentation mode. I'll just minimize this here. Yeah, so my name is Faris. I'm based in Amsterdam. I started a company 2 years ago. And I came up while I was cycling through Amsterdam, of course, on a bike. I thought of this expression, liberate the coder and empower the non-coder. And so my talk is all about coders and non-coders, because I'm been 15, 20 years in the life science area. So I've been working with biologists, basically. And there's been a revolution in biology, and all the biologists had to learn coding. And some of them made it and some of them didn't. A lot of people didn't make coding. I mean, they wanted to learn it, but it took a lot of time and they had to focus on their own domain knowledge. So this problem between coders and non-coders, and that's why I call it basically liberating the coder and empowering the non-coder. Because I think this is from my experience, and I think it applies to other areas as well. The non-coder wants to get control back on the data, especially data analysis. And this means adding meta annotations for genes and basically biology annotation. They want to visualize, they want to interact, they want to handle large data sets. And we're talking about millions of data points here. So they really want to get empowered. And the coder ends up doing a kind of help desk function to the non-coder. They really want to just focus on innovation, and they want to do methodologies. They'd like to educate the non-coder, but they wouldn't want to do the help desk and the fixing the bugs and changing the colors of graphs, for example. And they want zero deployment. Coders don't want to spend time deploying, they want it really quickly. So I call that liberation. That's what my talk is about. It's about how to get these two to work together closer, and how to dissipate or get harmony between these two. So basically, a coder usually has a package, and it starts becoming very popular. And if the non-coder uses it, there is a whole range of issues, and it becomes barriers. I tried to make these orange bricks here look like a barrier between the non-coder and the coder. And non-coders find using a package, the package management to be an issue, the data management, the deployment, the maintaining, training, and how to use the package. So this is a huge issue for coders. Of course, if the package is for coders, then there is no issues. But if your package is going to be used by domain expertise people, then there is issues. And in the labs that I've been involved with, and I'm not sure, I think it's also relevant to the other industries, there's never enough coders. There's always one coder and he's overworked and a bit stressed, and all the others are asking him to change the colors of graphs. And so there is a bottleneck going on. Not everywhere. I mean, some labs have a very good ratio between the two and it works very well. But in most labs that I work with, there is this ratio. And I have seen 14:1, 20:1. I'm curious to hear from other people what they experience in this. So I want to get this harmony, and that's what this talk is about. So I noticed there's an issue with the tool space. We basically have, in the life science area, you basically have Excel and Prism up in the top left, because they have low coding skills and they can handle small bits of data. And on the bottom right, you have the SAS, the Python, and the Bioinformatician. And they have the high coding skills, but they also are able to scale big data. What we really want is to have this SAS, Python, and R to go up into the quadrant here where people with low coding skill can use them. And that's why I started this company called Tercen. Tercen allows you to basically go into this area and have low coding skill and still be able to use R, Python, and SAS. So Tercen what is Tercen, the company I started? It's a visualization and relational layer on top of R. And I will show it to you. I have use cases. I can't go through them all because I've limited time, but I will go quickly through some ideas. So if I'm going to log into Tercen now, I'm going to Tercen, and the first thing you notice, it's online. So you don't install anything locally, and you basically can. It's like a GitHub. It has projects, private and public projects. It's made for the biologist or the non-coder to have the same kind of GitHub functionality, without having to know all the GitHub features or command lines. So it basically has versioning, teams, and public and private. In projects, you can make them public or private, I said. So I'm going to click on my demo here. I'm just clicking on it, and it's taking ages for some reason. Yes, here it is. And I've uploaded some data. So I'm going to create a workflow, and I'm going to call it my workflow. And basically, once you've created the workflow, you can start editing it. And I'm going to add a table, which basically means data. So the biologist or the non-coder can add a table and start manipulating. And they can add a data step, and they can basically take an Excel spreadsheet and create the view that they would like, or the projection, I call it. So here I'm dragging measurements and samples and gene ID. So this is a typical data set for the biologist, basically. And you basically drag and drop what you would want here. So I think there's an interference with the actual share screen. So there is a little delay in things, I noticed. So here I've basically dragged samples on the column. I dragged measurements at the y-axis, and I dragged the gene ID as a row. So this is basically every row here is a gene, and every column here is a sample from a tissue sample or a tumor sample. And this is the readout for every gene for each sample. But you can make your view, and you can color, for example, by the measurement value, and you can go into heat map mode. So this is a heat map mode, and we kept it very high performance visualization system. So you can make, this is just one projection, but you can do a couple of different projections. But if you don't want the projection system, you can actually add a shiny yourself, and I'm just going to add a shiny now. So I've added a shiny heat map. You can look at the code if people are interested in the code. But I just clicked on the heat map, the shiny heat map operator, and you can see it's basically a standard shiny with some extra code to connect to Tercen. That's what and we have everything on GitHub, so you can look at all the code on GitHub. So once I've added the shiny operator, I got this extra tab here on the left, which appeared when I added the shiny, and basically it allows me to project the shiny inside my view. What's so interesting here, so you can override the visualization system that comes with Tercen with your own visualization system. But what's nice about this system is that the data that you see in the crosstab view is what's being given to the shiny here. So for a biologist, that's really handy, or for a non-coder. For example, if they want to go to the crosstab view and they want to remove a whole set of cell lines, they would just basically select here, exclude some samples from the measurement table here, and then go back to the operator view, which is the shiny being used, and the shiny will update with there's now less samples being used here. So it's a way of the advantage of this is that the shiny developer doesn't have to cater for all the data management parts, and can focus on the shiny or the algorithms and the visualization, and not the data management layer. So once you have, I'll duplicate this now, and I'll duplicate and I'll show you another operation in OR, the mean operator. So all these operators are, so Tercen does not compute. It's basically, Tercen is just a relational and visual layer. So all this, like this mean operator, I'm going to take a mean operator to do, and I'm going to basically do a mean operation on every gene. And I'm going to change my projection, because that will influence basically my mean. So you can see here that every gene has all the data points for that gene, and there's no sample separation, no columns called sample anymore. So basically, when you run this, you basically are creating a mean function. If you want to see the mean function, it's quite simple here. I'll show you the code. It's basically connecting to Tercen. It's doing a select statement in OR. It's grouping by the column in the row, and then it's doing a mean function. So that's what's happening when I hit that run button. It runs that code, and the mean is executed. And now you can, for example, if you steal or move the heat map that we did after the mean, you'll see that inside the inside the projection in here, you now have the original columns from the Excel, but you have this mean value that is available to you. And you can use this mean value, for example, just in the same way as you use. So you can even use it as a filter, and you can color by the mean, for example. If you use it as a filter, it'll become a relational, you're using the relational aspects of Tercen. And if you use it as a color, you're using it as a visual aspect. So you basically can build up quite complicated workflows. I have, if you want to know, you can explore here and see some very sophisticated, it uses the same concept, and you can build up successive steps that use this relational and visual platform. So I'll go back here. How am I doing for time, Laura? Can
you are doing good. Yeah,
I have another.
5.
Okay, so I can do another 10 minutes, right?
Yeah,
basically.
perfect.
Great. So basically, what Tercen is doing is allowing you to package your OR code easier, so as the non-coder can be very flexible and powerful to use it. You can have a local instance. So when you click here, I'm running a local instance, a Docker instance here. So this is not on the cloud, as it were. This is running on my laptop, and you can build your codes. They're exactly the same functionality so we call this the enterprise server. It's the same functionality. And here I'm going to show you how we take basically a projection that I just mentioned, and we're going to manipulate it in our product here called Tercen Studio. It's basically RStudio with the right OR packages, and it can connect to the local instance, or it can actually connect to the cloud instance. So here I have opened up Tercen Studio. You'll recognize it as RStudio, the free version. And you see that I have all the packages ready. I'll just run the packages here. And this is where I say where the instance I want to use, and I log in, my login and password, and I can point to the projection that I want to use. In this case, this is the projection that I want to take the data from, because that's what I want to do in my development environment. I want to show you how to basically able to pull in data. And every projection has a unique workflow ID and a step ID. So here I'm using the workflow ID and step ID. And when I call this object here from the Tercen OR package, it basically talks to Tercen, the local Tercen. And now I can do, it's an OR6 class, so I can now basically call a select statement on it and get the projection. So now I've just done it, and see it comes in as a data frame. I can just click on the data frame here so you can see it. So you basically see the Y, the CI, and the ORI. These are the dot Y are the measurements coming from this projection. So these are the actual data points, and the CI and the ORI are the location, the indexes of this cell. This would be the row and the column index. This would be 00. This would be 01, 02, and you're basically getting the data as a data format. You manipulate the data format, like for example, using the Hadley piping, and you save it back. That's how you develop an operator or a Shiny. You basically use this concept of our accessing it through the API and a table in and a table out, basically. So I'll continue here. So I mentioned the Tercen Cloud, we have the Tercen Studio, and we have the Tercen Enterprise. And we think that this could really change the game for non-coders and coders. We think that Tercen allows basically non-coders to powerfully interact with data. And we think that coders, they can simplify the OR code and the OA deployment because Tercen will help them in that respect. So I think Tercen liberates, especially the coder, and empowers the non-coder. We're always looking for OR coders and use cases. So if you have problems and use cases that you would like to, we're a startup, so we're interested in the use cases to show what we can do. And we're looking for OR coders. It's free. You can go up and you can sign up for the cloud version. You can download the enterprise version and the development version, so it's free. And I'm looking forward to anybody who wants to try it. This is my name, Faris Naji. This is my email address, and I hope you guys get in contact with me. I can take some questions now, and I appreciate it. So I'll just stop sharing maybe. And take
Thanks, Faris. Yeah, we've got, if anyone wants to send questions, if you'd like to just type them into the chat, but we have a question from Eugene. Eugene asked, are there any issues with reproducibility with Tercen?
Well, we keep the package management. We use the ORM package manager, and we have a whole cache system for package management. So in terms of having the same code available to you a month later, 2 months, 3 months, yes, so we take care of that. We're using a sophisticated package layer in Tercen. In terms of reproducibility, in terms of code, like the workflow, and because we're workflow orientated, it means we keep all the relational data pipeline. And we also have a versioning system, which I didn't show you, and we haven't activated it in the GUI. So every time you change the workflow, you get a version. So we've taken the GitHub model that projects or any project should be completely versioned. So we take it on 2 points, the package management and the workflow versioning itself. I hope that answered Eugene's question.
Yeah, we've got a question from Jan. Jan asks, if a non-coder selects and removes this, that, and the other column as demoed, can some other user find out what was deleted and why 3 years later?
Yeah, so that's a versioning question. So we keep what the clicks the user did on the, so they deleted the 3 columns or removed them. But if you go back to the demo, I removed those things, you didn't see it, but it keeps a little filter on the top left to show that you have actually removed those 3 or 4 columns. And those filters are available throughout your workflow. So you actually have a visual representation of what you did. And if you delete that filter, the 3 columns come back again, or the 4 columns. So it's a way of, so our system is a very visual system. So everything that you're manipulating the data visually. So you're adding columns, the rows and the columns, and you have the filters, and you're manipulating the visuals interactively.
Okay. Someone called WD asks, says, WF is versioned. Is data also versioned?
Yes, so we version everything. We don't expose it to the GUI at the moment, since we're in our version 2 of the product. But we're trying to think of how to expose that, just like in Git, how they expose it with these branches and these master branch. And so we're thinking of how to expose it, but the answer is yes, we version everything. And the way we've implemented versioning is through a kind of action. Every time you do an action, we record the action and you can replay the action. We don't express it through the GUI yet, but I think in version 3 or 4, we will have the versioning exposed via the GUI.
Okay. A question from Rich. Can he ask how you're managing the product development process? How do you prioritize feature development and get feedback, etc.?
Yes, it's a great question. I do that all the day, but it's basically like we just got the Pfizer deal last week, and everything that Pfizer says they want, I just give it to them. It's to do with who's paying, because we're a small company, so customers are key. So whoever, it's the one who's paying me the most. But I also have my own vision. We're prioritizing performance, like I mentioned, millions of data points. So we want to, at the moment, we're handling 20 million data points in the visual and the visual aspects and the relational aspects. And we want to go much higher than that. So performance is a constant priority for us, since we are dealing with large data sets in our customers. And at the moment, the largest customer determines the features, but we have our own vision. So we basically fight a lot about features and which ones to do. We have one so the engineering features usually win out more than the cosmetic features.
Okay, I'll make this the last question. This is from Jan. how are there's a couple of questions within a question. How are the
Yeah.
columns specified? Can this be applied? How are the columns specified?
Yeah.
And can this be applied to another matrix? And even more importantly, what happens if the column names of the other matrix are not the same as that of the matrix which was used to define the filter?
Yeah, that's very good. We have a thing called a wizard who does the mapping between, let's say you've made a workflow and you've used a certain column name. That workflow you can add a wizard at the top of the workflow, which does the mapping. And so the new column names that you use for a new data set, it maps the old column name. So we have this mapping function, which I didn't show in the demo, but it's a wizard. And the wizard asks you the question, what are your column names? And the user says, oh, this is my column name. And therefore it knows how to map it to the workflow. I also have a join step, which allows you to join extra annotation because the biologists always want to change the column names. And that's called joining. And of course, the OR programmers know about it. It's called joining, but I let it for the non-coders that they can join extra meta information, including renaming as a step, as a join step. And then they can bring it in as an extra, another file describing what column names to use being joined into the workflow.
Okay, brilliant. Sorry, Faris.
No problem. I hope that was clear.
That was great. Okay, I think we're going to end time on questions for you. There's just one more question in the chat, if you wouldn't mind answering just via the chat, if that's okay.
No,
so thank you very much for joining us, Faris.
No, thank you, Laura, for inviting me, and Richard. I'm delighted that, and also congratulations being bought by Accenture. I think that's great.
Cheers. Thank you very much. Okay, so next up we have Jonathan. So Jonathan, I believe you're there. If you could, hello, unmute yourself and share your screen.
All right. Hey, thank you very much. Okay, here we go. We can all see that.
Yep, all good.
Cool. So career and business building tips for data scientists, how to get paid more while working on more meaningful and enjoyable work. So that's basically the promise of this presentation today. And the basic premise of this talk is effectively that if we can increase the probability of producing a profitable outcome for our clients and be able to effectively communicate that to our clients right at the beginning of the project and throughout the project as well, then basically everybody wins, and it is a much better, happier situation. So before we get started, just wanted to give a big thank you to Mango for organizing all of this and basically organizing this great community and these great events. If you are kind of getting started in data scientists, or you're in the field, then having a community is such a great way to learn. And I've really had a lot of my best friends and a lot of people I really respect out of these groups. So it's a really, really great thing to do. So thank you. Okay, so my name is Jonathan, and I'm the founder of Data Strategy Pro. I've previously worked at companies like Morgan Stanley and HSBC in London. I've managed to become a best-selling instructor with 14,000 students, which I've trained in R and other data tools. And if you want to get in touch with me, then my LinkedIn profile is Jonathan J. Ng. So it'd be great to keep in touch. And basically what I do now is I help executives and their data science teams make data science projects more profitable and predictable. And so effectively, to give a better sense of what that actually means, here's some of the clients that I'm actually working with at the moment. And so this is Nicole, a fantastic data scientist that I have the privilege to work with. And basically what she said about me is that Jonathan has helped me to talk to my clients to better understand their needs and better evaluate different data science solutions. This includes considerations such as scalability, dependencies, performance metrics, optimization, and different technology solutions. Since working with him, I feel like I'm able to deliver a more predictable outcome and produce more value for the business in less time. So I work with data scientists, and I also work with their stakeholders as well. So this is Liz, Dr. Liz Berryman, the founder of Channel. And basically what Channel does is that they develop technology to help mental health and well-being in the workplace. And so basically what she said is that Jonathan has helped us to take the complexity and uncertainty out of data science projects. His experience in business and technology helps us to plan out data science projects that address our true business needs and make the biggest impact with the resources we have available. So this is something I'm pretty passionate about helping out with these kind of things. And as much as possible, I'm going to try and give you as many of the pointers as I can of how you can potentially do some of this yourself in the next 20 minutes or so. So now, a lot of my friends are data scientists, and there's a lot of common frustrations that I see in the field. So typically, data is not good enough, right? So this is actually really, really common, because at the end of the day, you know, it doesn't matter how fancy the algorithm is when you build a model. Fundamentally, if the data is not there, it just doesn't work. And so, you know, these are kind of things that you really want to be able to call out and communicate as quickly as possible before you invest too much time into a project. Secondly, with data science, AI, machine learning, and everything all over the media and all over the place, there's a lot of unrealistic expectations that come in from clients. And then being able to manage these upfront, again, is something that is going to make your life much more pleasant when you work through things. And just setting expectations so that, you know, the clients are really happy with the results at the end of things. Another thing that comes out is basically bad specifications. So as data experts, we're able to help specify the projects, but a lot of the times projects come in and either clients have some ideas of what needs to be done, or maybe you have other teams in there like product managers or designers who don't necessarily have the expertise in data, having quite a hand in how things are set up. And I'd say that you just really need to be able to step in there to help shape these specifications as well. And this was from a data scientist friend of mine. And basically he was pointing out that, you know, in other types of industries, like say building or something like that, there's, you know, there's certain standards that you need to comply to, right? So if you're building a house, you need a code of compliance, otherwise you're not allowed to build that house. And there doesn't really seem to be that kind of standards in our field and profession. And that's probably something, you know, that there really needs to be a sort of minimum set of standards. But anyways, moving on. Now, on the flip side of things, clients have a lot of frustrations with data scientists as well. So the troubles that they typically have is data scientists are difficult to understand, expensive, and a lot of times the results that we produce are somewhat unpredictable. And because they're unpredictable, then it can take longer and make us even more expensive. And then finally, they don't always understand the business that they're getting involved in. And this is something that's really important, not just so that the client can feel like you understand like what's going on in the business, but it's also important as well so that you're able to effectively manage and solve for the problems that we're actually trying to solve for. Because a lot of times, you know, we want to go in and just grab the data to see what's available or something like that. But often, you know, you need to be a little bit more proactive about it and really dig in, because sometimes the data that's available isn't always what you need. And in order to get the data that you need, you can actually have a little bit of a hand in how that data is maybe collected or sourced as well. Okay, so ultimately the result of this is that clients make decisions without the expertise, and data scientists implement solutions that don't always live up to expectations. And this tends to be an all-round kind of lose-lose situation. So if we can help resolve this, then that's going to be a good thing. So there's a lot of common issues these days. Now we're getting to a point where we have a lot more tooling available. So there's some great tools to make it easier to implement machine learning models, right? So you've got all the big cloud providers, and they're providing all these different libraries to be able to do ML, so that like software engineers can start to do machine learning. And there's a lot of auto ML and no code tools and all that sort of thing. But fundamentally, even if you can build a model, right, it doesn't mean that that model is necessarily going to work well. And not just work well now, but work well now and also into the future as well. So, all of these items on this list here are things that can potentially go wrong, even if you have tools that make it a lot easier to build ML models. You can still end up with overfitting and data leakage and data consistency, measurement errors, and all of these different issues. And I think it's very much our job as data professionals to come in and really point these out in the project, and break it down in a fairly non-technical way, but really being able to call out that, hey, unless you have these things in place, unless you set up your projects in a way that actually considers these things and addresses these things, then there's very likely going to be issues with the project. And so, if you're not familiar with all of these things yourself, then definitely pulling in the help where necessary, just so that you're aware of where these things are going to trip you up and become an issue. And yeah. Okay. So I started making a bit of a list of maybe how to work through a project a little bit. So first of all, it's really important to understand exactly what the problem is. So this is just really taking time with the client to figure out, what exactly are you trying to solve for? And a lot of times we need to probably go a little bit deeper than just say, hey, what's the problem here? Because sometimes the clients will come with an idea of what kind of already needs to be done because they see the potential with the technology and everything. But really, if you try and dig into why you're trying to solve that, and other things like, so what's the problem? How much is that problem actually worth in terms of actual, say, cost or opportunity, or people's hours working on a process, and getting a few more details like how like how these tasks perform currently, how accurate are those current in the first place, and all those kind of things is going to give you a much better understanding of if your model is even going to be worth to implement, if there's going to be sufficient data to figure out are those models even going to work. And so figure out what data you need to solve the problem before you try and solve it. So again, it's very easy to want to just kind of dive in and look at the data that's already available. A lot of times, though, that the data that we need to solve the problem isn't necessarily already captured in a system, which we can just write some query against or something like that. A lot of times, the data that's necessary is actually somewhat embedded in the processes that people are doing. And so you really want to sometimes be able to capture those kinds of things as well. Of course, there's also a whole bunch of external data sources that you can use to augment your data sets. And so those are all potentials. And so really what you want to really hone in on and talk through with the client is, how would you actually solve this? So how would you actually solve this if there wasn't a machine learning model? And talking through those things is really going to be able to help you out. Okay, so figure out the cost and involvement in sourcing that data. So it's one thing to be able to source that data. It's another thing to be able to source that data in a cost-effective way. Obviously, data often needs a lot of cleaning. You need to be able to extract sufficient signal from all of the noise. Depending on what you're doing, maybe you need to apply labeling. And there's all these things that need to be done sometimes, which can often be a huge amount of work. And it's all fine to think in research mode where, well, you're just doing it once. But if you have a model which you actually want to stick into production and actually turn into some sort of data product, you really need to be thinking about if that process of collecting that data, does your model even generalize to the other circumstances that the client wants to use this for, other than just your test circumstance? And if it, if it does, like, is there new data that needs to be come in and sourced and cleaned and labeled for that process? And if that's necessary, there's going to be a cost to that. And you can, as data professionals, you can kind of foresee that and be able to add some sort of estimation to how much this thing would actually cost to do, because you don't want to get to the end of the project and then the client to realize that, wow, this is going to be really, really expensive and completely unfeasible to actually do this at scale. Okay, so design solutions on what you need rather than what you have. So kind of cover that in some of the previous points, actually. And then, yeah, really just make sure that the value of the solution that you are implementing is significantly greater than the implementation cost plus some sort of error margin, right? And so all of these things are going to definitely help out in being able to produce a more profitable and predictable outcome for your clients. Okay. So another thing I just really wanted to call out here is that a lot of times we get caught up in the implementation of things. Now, what I've put down here is separate out the implementation from the diagnosis. So, if you're a builder, like builders implement stuff, right? But if you're, say, an expert, you're a doctor or something like that, what you're providing is a diagnosis. And so really kind of getting into this mindset that you can kind of separate the two. And pretty much everything that I've listed in the previous slide is much more of a diagnosis than any implementation work, right? And this in itself is actually something really, really valuable and something that you should be, I guess, kind of pulling into your awareness that, this is something that kind of needs to be done. And whether this is something that you do yourself, so stepping forward into that position where you are the expert in all of these things. And so you are the person providing this diagnosis, or if you don't really feel that you're up to that, because I know that a lot of times, people just want to, a lot of times people just want to build stuff, right? Then if you just want to build stuff, then you really need to be aware that somebody else is directing this. And, if they're sort of misdirecting this because they don't have the sort of expertise in data, then, they're setting you up to build a project that is maybe not really going to work as well. And so, definitely try and get some help there. This is kind of what I'm all about and, the service I provide. But, reaching out to other data scientists and people who have expertise in this field as well is definitely going to help you out with this as well. All right. Okay. So, all right. Finally here, I just wanted to give a little gift to everybody here. So this is one of the courses that I have that I've built at the moment, our tidyverse reporting and analytics for Excel users. So if you're an Excel user or any Excel users who you would like to get onto R, this is a fairly nice introduction to it all. So I built this course originally because when I was looking around for training for my team at HSBC and all the business intelligence users who were, using a lot of Excel for everything, I found that there wasn't really something that was kind of really suitable enough, because a lot of courses were really quite technical and really get into the weeds about a lot of different things. A lot of them were really using base R. And so this just kind of makes it easy for people. I'm really kind of pleased that it's helped a lot more people get into using R who maybe otherwise wouldn't have. And so, there's a free copy of this there for anybody who would like to use that or give that to somebody that you know. So you can just go over to www.datastrategypro.com/courses and use this coupon code. And this coupon code will apply discount to that, as well as some of the other courses that I have on the site as well. Cool. So again, if you'd like to keep in touch, you can find me on LinkedIn at Jonathan J. Ng. And I hope that you found this presentation helpful. There's a newsletter I'm setting up as well to talk a little bit more about data strategy and different tips and that you can use for working with data, some of the common issues that I see popping up, and how to work more effectively with clients and everything as well. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. If you've got some questions for Jonathan, please pop them in the chat now. We've just got one coming from Rich. You spoke about the hype around data science driving unrealistic expectations. Do you think data science as a term may go the way of phrases like big data, like they might die out somehow?
Yeah, I mean, hopefully over time, people will start to get a better understanding of what data science actually means. It's, it could well be like big data, which I still see being thrown around quite a lot. Yeah.
We have a question here. Will you collaborate with Tercen to help transition Excel users to R? Yeah,
no, I think so. I think the more Excel users we can get to R, it'll definitely be a good thing. I think just having some appreciation as well, though, that what we do is extremely technical. It can get really technical really fast, and it's great for people to better understand data, and just picking up a tool like R actually gives a much better understanding and appreciation for using data. But just having appreciation as well, that not everybody will make that shift. So still being able to work with and appreciate those people as well.
Rich says, how much did Faris pay you to say that?
I was someone else.
No comment.
Okay, if we don't have any more questions, I'd just like to say thank you very much, Jonathan. Thank you for joining us. I know it's very early in the morning for you in New Zealand, so much appreciated. Yeah, no, I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. Probably still a little bit sleepy, but it's just great to have the opportunity to come back to this group after moving back here for a year or so. I didn't think I'd get the opportunity to really sort of be so involved in this group again. So just really great to be back here. So thank you. No worries, great to have you. Okay, great. Thanks again, Jonathan. So last but by no means least, we have Rachael from RStudio. Rachel's going to go over some of the highlights from the RStudio conference that took place in January. So Rachael, whenever you're ready, if you'd like to unmute yourself and share your screen.
Hi, everyone. Let me pull up my screen right now. Oh, organizing these Zoom windows in front of my face. There we go. Thank you all so much for having me today. It's great to be involved in the LondonR group as well. So I'm Rachael Dempsey. I'm an enterprise advocate at RStudio. So I work with many of our professional customers, but I also organize the Boston user group, which is of course virtual too, so open to everyone all over the world as well as the enterprise data science group for some of our studio's professional customers. But show of hands, we'd love to, maybe virtual clapping hands, we'd love to know who had a chance to attend RStudio Global about 2 weeks ago. And maybe Laura, you can tell from the chat window how many people we had attend.
Okay, I'll see what I can do. I've managed to clap myself. I don't know if anyone else knows how to clap. But there's lots of people commenting that they came in the chat.
Awesome. So Laura had reached out to me to kind of give a recap of RStudio Global. So for anybody that was there, this may be a little bit repetitive for you, but I think there'll also be some new resources that you can take from this talk as well. But while I definitely missed being able to see everyone in person at RStudio conference, it was great to see the community come together virtually as well. And just wanted to share a few stats from the conference. So as many who were there may know, it was a 24-hour straight event. So we had people from all over the world dialing in, and 17,000 people actually registered from all across the globe, from 68 countries, with 55 different speakers. And so because it was 24 hours straight, we actually played each of the talks twice to try and accommodate time zones. I know some people were on far late into the night, but we tried to do our best to accommodate multiple time zones for that. And I'll admit, I wasn't sure how things would really go with 17,000 people joining virtually, but we really were in awe of the social connection that attendees felt and how awesome all the talks were and how everything just went overall. It was really fun to just throughout the conference kind of watch on Twitter and LinkedIn and see everybody's feedback. I think one of my favorite ones was from Jerome Ooms, who said, "I'm calling it. This really works for post-pandemic conferences. We should record talks, and then the event can be like a movie premiere where we watch the talks and focus on discussion and cocktails and our celebrity gossip." And so this format did really work well for us. So what we did is we had all the speakers pre-record their talks so that we could play them during the conference and have things run smoothly, but then have a live Q&A with the speakers after their talks. And so I think it's great to kind of tell you what happened, but with COVID, I've been getting a little bit used to kind of using my imagination more. So as I make my friends and family play restaurant with me or do a bar crawl all through my house, I think the best way to really recap this is kind of pretend that we are just all there right now. So on the day of the conference, so January 21st, I was one of the co-hosts of a session. So if we are imagining that we're going back in time to the conference, I do want to just share one of the talks that I thought was really valuable and especially helpful to share, I think, with a meetup group, because we may have people from all ranges. So for very beginners, just getting started with R, to more advanced users. I'd love to share a lightning talk on the power of great data sets presented by Alex Cookson. And I am actually going to reshare my screen because I forgot that little checkbox that allows the audio. There we go.
Hi,
And Laura, just gonna do a quick check that you heard that little dinging.
Yep, got it.
Okay, perfect.
I'm Alex Cookson, and I'd like to talk about the power of great data sets. I'd like to start off this talk by posing a question that I think all of us have asked ourselves at one point, and that is, how do I learn to do this thing in R? Whether that's sentiment analysis or data visualization or web scraping, how do we learn something? And Alison Horst, who does a lot of wonderful illustrations about R and statistics, has one that answers this question. And it shows how teachers, mentors, and the wonderful RStats community all contribute to taking someone from being a beginner to some level of proficiency with something. But I always look at this illustration and ask myself, what about great data sets? Now, when I say great data sets, I'm talking about something pretty specific. I'm talking about data sets that are both cool and interesting. And when I say cool, I mean something that when you come across it, you say to yourself, hey, that's cool, or that's really fun. It's something that speaks to you on a deeper level, and it tends to be pretty personal. So what's cool to you might not be cool to me. And when I say interesting, I mean that it rouses your curiosity. It makes you start asking a whole bunch of questions that you really want the answer to. If you ever played a video game where you say to yourself, just 5 more minutes or 1 more turn, and you're still playing it an hour later, this is the dataset version of that. Just 1 more graph. So some examples that I enjoy are the Duke Lemur Center dataset, which looks at ages and weights of almost 30 different species of lemur. The Broadway Grosses dataset, which looks at weekly box office grosses, tickets sold, average top ticket prices of Broadway shows going back to 1985, and fictional character personalities, which I consider to be one of the all-time greatest of great data sets. And this one looks at personality traits of 800 fictional characters across over 250 different spectrums, such as the playful to serious spectrum, where we might find Michael Scott from The Office on the playful side, and Worf from Star Trek Next Generation way over on the serious side. And I think this is such a great data set because I've been watching so much TV and so many movies lately that when I came across it, I thought, oh, this is so fun. It's something that speaks to something I've been spending a lot of my time doing. And I immediately had tons and tons of questions that I wanted to ask it and uncover from this data set. One of those questions was, what are some of my favorite characters' personalities? And I put in a whole bunch of work and ended up with some graphs that looked like this, which takes the 6 characters from Pride and Prejudice and shows their strongest traits. So we see that Elizabeth Bennet at the top left is a treasure as opposed to trash. She's important. She has a high IQ. She's independent and beautiful and a feminist. But to put this together, I had to learn to do a whole bunch of things I didn't know how to do before, like use custom fonts so I could get this Georgian era kind of handwriting vibe, to tweak labels using the glue and GG text packages. I had to choose an appropriate color palette for the subject matter and adjust a ton of theme elements using ggplot2. A second question I had was, which characters are most similar to or different than one another? And again, I put in a bunch of work and ended up with something like this, which looks at reasonable versus deranged characters plotted against rugged versus refined characters. So here we see that characters like Sandra Clegane and Jane Cobb are really similar to one another. They're deranged and rugged, and their opposites are Charlotte York from Sex and the City and Annie Edison, who are reasonable and refined. And to do this, I had to conduct principal component analysis with tidy models, because these are actually principal components. You don't find them in the data. I had to learn to add text and arrow annotations to get this graph here, and I wrote a blog post where this is an interactive chart, so I had to learn how to make an interactive chart using Plotly. And if I can be honest with you for a moment, I never would have put this much effort, this many hours into analyzing Titanic passengers. It was because it was such a great, engaging data set where I had tons of questions that I wanted the answers to, that I had the drive and the curiosity to actually get those answers and learn a whole bunch of stuff in the process. So I encourage you to get your own great data sets. And to Alison, I very respectfully that we maybe add one thing to the balloon. Thank you.
Let me flip back over to my presentation here. And so if we were actually at the RStudio conference, we would have then transitioned over to a live Q&A where Alex could join us and answer some of your questions, where we use Slido so you could post questions anonymously, because this is not real life live at the conference. If you do have any questions, I'd be happy to pass them along to Alex as well, and can share them on the meetup page if you want to use the chat window here for that as well. But really something that I was worried about with having a virtual conference is, what about the networking part of the conference? And no, that was definitely not the same, but we did try to recreate what we could. So we used something called spatial chat after each keynote session. So you actually could go into this virtual room where you could drag your little avatar to a table and chat with people that were at that table. And you'd see that if you dragged yourself to the other side, those voices would get quieter and you could join this new table and start a conversation with others. Some people use this. I think some people found it a little frustrating and missed the real life interaction. But we also did have birds of a feather groups too. So for people with similar interests, or maybe data for good, insurance, life science, our community organizers. And then another way we tried to recreate this networking as we would have in real life is through social groups, which were open throughout the whole conference. And you could have text-based chat with other attendees. And these were organized by different industries and topics as well. So what's next? Whether you were at the conference or maybe you missed it and wanted to watch some of the recordings, I've just included a few helpful links here, and I'll share these in the chat window too. But as of yesterday, all of the conference recordings are up. So please go and check those out. But also we found that from those text-based chats or spatial chat, people had great conversations with people from their industry and really wanted to continue those conversations. And so when the conference closed, those chats kind of disappeared. So I'm starting to build these new industry pages on the RStudio community site so that you can use that to ask questions of others from your industry and network with people, maybe ask them about their recommended packages for something specific. So would love to have people join that too and kind of keep the conversation going. You can also attend live webinars throughout the year. And just wanted to put in a plug for the R and Python webinar that we have running at noon Eastern time. So I guess, I think noon to 1 tomorrow. It is actually the largest webinar registration list that we have ever had at RStudio. And I think even from the conference as well, it shows there's a huge focus on language interoperability. And there were a lot of questions about using R and Python together, and different people from different teams collaborating depending on the languages that they use. And then lastly, just to put on your radar, when hopefully the world is back to a more normal state, you can join us in Orlando in 2022 for a hopefully in-person RStudio conference. But just want to say thank you so much to everyone today for listening, but also to all the attendees of the conference in 2 weeks ago. And just want to answer any questions that you have. And for those that attended, I love to hear your favorite talks too. And just a big thank you to all of our partners as well that helped make the conference possible. And that includes Mango. So thank you again.
Great, thank you very much, Rachel. We've already got a few questions that have been sent in. Faris asks, what did you personally like the most from the conference?
So I love the R community. So my favorite thing was trying to kind of recreate that in-person experience virtually. So joining in on some of those spatial chat things and the social groups. I was trying to recreate this too by like occasionally sending people like a Starbucks gift card to pretend that I actually ran into them in person at the airport on the way to the conference, but doing anything that I could to still make a connection with people there, because that really is one of my favorite things about the RStudio conference.
Rich asks, given your experience of RStudio Global, do you ever think we'll go back to face-to-face only events with no virtual element?
So I think there will always be a mix of the two. I can't speak on behalf of the conference team at RStudio, but in regards to the meetups that I organize, I've loved being able to open them up to everyone. And I think maybe I'll do a mix of an in-person meetup 1 month and then a virtual meetup the next month, so that everybody can join. But I do miss seeing people in person.
Yeah, same here. I agree. I think the future will be a mix of the types of events. Like tonight, we've got people from all over the world. It's, you know, it's great that we can make it free and accessible to people. So I agree. I think definitely a mix.
Yeah, and we definitely noted that at RStudio. So the fact that we could have 17,000 people register to attend, and before, when maybe people couldn't travel or come to the conference, they were still able to join. So I'm sure there will be some sort of virtual aspect.
WD says, industry pages or Discord channels, what's your opinion?
So I don't have too much of an opinion yet because I'm just getting started with them. But the way that I'm trying to do it right now is on community.rstudio.com. There's a new industry section. So I'll share my screen again. Or actually, I'll just put it in the chat window. This is an example of the marketing and digital analytics one. And so hopefully this works well. We put a kind of summary of some of the conversation that happened during the conference and are inviting people to keep that conversation going.
And Mason says, not really a question, just a statement. Even before pandemic times, the move to virtual options were fantastic for those of us unable to travel for financial or work obligation reasons. Plus the recorded talks to watch later, if there was a time conflict, was great. So kind of what we were saying, it's great that it opens it up to people, makes these kind of events more accessible. So I think there's definitely going to be a hybrid model going forward.
Definitely, I agree. And would love to hear for some people that attended maybe what some of their favorite talks were, or any feedback in general that you have for me to take back to the team too.
Okay, if we don't have any more questions, I think we are all done. If people like to just comment what talks they liked at RStudio in the chat, that would be great. I will have a recording of this out probably tomorrow, so I'll share that with everybody. And I think I'll probably send out a survey. I'd be really interested to know what time we should host LondonR. I've held it a couple of different times. I know like too early is difficult for people, but we don't want it too late because you've got people shouting at you for dinner. So I'll send out a survey. I'm interested to know what topics, what workshops you would be interested in if we can organise those. So thanks again to all of our speakers, and thank you for everyone for joining. I'll leave the chat and the